Welcome back to the Shadow Journal. Tonight, I want you to check the lock on your door one more time. Pull the curtains shut. Ensure that, for the next hour, you are truly alone. The file we are about to open is not a ghost story. It doesn't speak of monsters lurking in the woods or ancient curses buried in tombs. No, it speaks of men in well-tailored suits. Men with Ivy League degrees who worked in the most prestigious government buildings in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the darkest chapter in the history of global intelligence. Project MKultra. The night of October 28, 1953 location. The Statler Hotel, New York City. Room 101 8A. It is 2:30 a.m. Outside, the city that never sleeps is unusually quiet. Inside the room, two men are present. One is sleeping soundly. The other is awake, pacing like a caged animal. His name is Frank Olson. He is a 43-year-old biological weapons expert for the U.S. Army, a devoted husband, a father of three, a man of logic. But tonight, Frank Olson is no longer himself. For days, he has lived in a state of absolute, bone-chilling paranoia. He whispered to his wife that he had made a terrible mistake. He felt eyes on him at every corner. He wanted to resign. He wanted to vanish. In the dim glow of the neon signs from 7th Avenue, Olson's face looks distorted, a mask of pure agony. He stares out the window at the cold concrete 13 floors below. Suddenly, a thunderous crash. The night air rushes in through shattered glass. When the other man in the room, a CIA operative named Robert Lashbrook, wakes up, Frank Olson is gone. The police called it a suicide due to depression. Case closed. The family received a sealed coffin and a warning. Never open it. But Frank Olson didn't jump because of a midlife crisis. He jumped because of what was screaming through his veins, a drop of a colorless, tasteless liquid that had turned his reality into a waking nightmare. That liquid was LSD, and the men who poisoned him were his own colleagues. Why did the CIA kill one of their best scientists? What were they trying to find in the shattered fragments of his mind? To answer that, we must travel back to the dawn of the Cold War, to a time when the greatest weapon was not a nuclear bomb, but the human mind itself. Chapter 1. The Black Sorcerer of the CIA. To understand MKultra, you must meet the man who ran it. His name was Sidney Gottlieb. If you saw him on the street, you would never suspect him. Gottlieb lived on a small farm with no running water, spent his mornings milking goats and practicing meditation. He was a stutterer with a clubfoot, a man who seemed more like a humble monk than a government assassin. But behind this mask of peace, Sidney Gottlieb was known as the Black Sorcerer of the CIA. Gottlieb believed that to protect America, the CIA needed to master the art of mind control. Image: a dark silhouette of a man milking a goat in the moonlight, transitioning into a sterile, cold laboratory filled with poison vials in 1953. The director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, gave Gottlieb a blank check and a license to kill. The mission was simple but terrifying. Find a way to break the human soul, erase its memories, and rebuild it as a programmable tool. They wanted Manchurian candidates, assassins who didn't know they were killers, and spies who could never reveal a secret because they didn't remember holding it. Gottlieb's philosophy was brutal. To build a new mind, you must first destroy the old one. You need a sledgehammer to smash the structure of the ego. He tried electroshock. He tried sensory deprivation. He tried hypnosis. But then he found the ultimate hammer, a strange new chemical from Switzerland called lysergic acid diethylamide. For Gottlieb, LSD wasn't a spiritual tool, it was a weapon of war. Chapter 2: Operation Midnight Climax. Gottlieb knew that testing LSD on healthy soldiers in a controlled lab wasn't enough. He wanted to see how it worked in the real world, where people were vulnerable, distracted, and prone to sin. This led to the creation of one of the most depraved subprojects of MKultra, Operation Midnight Climax. The year was 1955. The location, 225 Chestnut Street, San Francisco. To any passerby, it looked like an ordinary apartment, but inside, the CIA had built a house of mirrors. They hired an aging alcoholic narcotics agent named George Hunter White to run it. White wasn't a scientist. He was a thug who enjoyed watching people suffer. The CIA hired prostitutes to lure men, ordinary citizens, businessmen, sailors back to the apartment. Once there, the women would offer them a drink. But the martini was spiked with a heavy dose of Gottlieb's LSD. Image: a vintage 1950s bar. A woman in a red dress pouring a drink. The liquid glowing with a faint, unnatural shimmer behind a large two-way mirror in the bedroom. George Hunter White sat on a portable toilet, sipping a martini and watching the victims lose their minds. He watched as they began to scream at the walls, as they wept in terror, or as they fell into catatonic trances. The CIA recorded every moan, every hallucination, and every moment of sexual humiliation. The victims had no idea they were being drugged. They thought they were having a stroke or going insane. When the drug wore off, they crawled home in shame, unable to tell anyone what had happened. They were the perfect guinea pigs because their own embarrassment was the CIA's greatest shield. For nearly a decade, George Hunter White operated these safe houses in San Francisco and New York. In his diary, he wrote, "I was a very minor prophet, but it was a dream of a job. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, and be a general son of a bitch and get paid for it?" But as Midnight Climax continued, Gottlieb grew bored with the chaos of the streets. He wanted more data. He wanted to move from the brothels to the hospitals and universities. He wanted to see what happened when you pushed the human brain past the point of no return. Chapter 3: The Human Guinea Pigs. We now move to the cold, gray city of Montreal, Canada, 1957. Inside the Allen Memorial Institute, a doctor named Dr. Ewen Cameron was conducting experiments that would make the Nazis blush. Cameron was no back-alley hack. He was the president of the World Psychiatric Association. The CIA secretly funded Cameron through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. Cameron had a theory called psychic driving. He believed he could delete a person's personality and reformat it like a blank cassette tape. His victims weren't criminals. They were ordinary people who came to him for minor issues, postpartum depression, anxiety, or grief. Image: a woman in a hospital gown, her eyes wide with fear, strapped into a bed with wires attached to her head. Cameron's treatment was a descent into hell. Phase 1: chemical sleep. He would put patients into a drug-induced coma for months. Imagine going to sleep in the spring and waking up when the snow is falling. Your muscles atrophied, your life gone. Phase 2: depatterning. While they were groggy, he would blast them with electroshock therapy, not the standard dose, but 40 times the legal limit, multiple times a day. He wanted to wipe their memories clean. Phase 3: psychic driving. He would force them to wear headphones and listen to a looped recording of a single phrase. "You are a good person. You will obey. or your mother hates you, repeated 500,000 times. The results were catastrophic. These people didn't become new versions of themselves. They became empty shells. They forgot how to walk. They forgot their own names. They forgot their children. One woman, the wife of a Canadian member of Parliament, came in for mild depression and left unable to use a toilet or speak a full sentence for the rest of her life. But MKUltra wasn't just destroying innocent people in hospitals. It was accidentally creating monsters that would later terrorize America. Did you know that Whitey Bulger, the most notorious mob boss in Boston's history, was an MKUltra volunteer? While in prison in 1957, he was promised a reduced sentence if he participated in a medical study for 18 months. He was injected with massive doses of LSD. Bulger later wrote that the drug killed the human part of me and left behind a predator who felt no remorse. And then, there was the boy genius at Harvard, a 16-year-old math prodigy named Ted Kaczynski. Under the orders of the CIA-funded Professor Henry Murray, young Ted was subjected to hours of extreme psychological torture, humiliation, verbal abuse, and the systematic crushing of his ego. For 3 years, they poked and prodded his mind. They broke something deep inside him. Decades later, Ted Kaczynski would flee into the woods of Montana and begin a bombing campaign that paralyzed the United States. The world knew him as the Unabomber. The CIA had spent millions trying to prevent terror, but in their arrogance, they had built the very monster they feared. Chapter 4. The order to burn the Great Erasure by 1973. The atmosphere in Washington, D.C. had turned poisonous. The Watergate scandal was tearing through the Nixon administration like a wildfire. And for the first time, the American public was looking at their government not as a protector, but as a predator. Inside the headquarters of the CIA, Richard Helms, the director of the agency, felt the heat pressing against the back of his neck. He knew that the congressional committees and the prying eyes of journalists would soon turn toward the agency's most sensitive programs. And there was no program more sensitive, more illegal, or more horrifying than MKUltra. Helms called Sidney Gottlieb into his office. The conversation was brief, cold, and final. "Sidney, clean it all up. Leave nothing." In early 1973, Gottlieb personally supervised the destruction of over 20 years of research. Thousands of boxes of patient files, audio recordings of torture sessions, chemical formulas, and laboratory reports were fed into industrial shredders and incinerated. Gottlieb believed he was burning the evidence of his crimes. He believed he was wiping MKUltra from the face of the earth. He retired shortly after, retreating to his goat farm, convinced that the shadows would protect him forever. But history has a way of leaving footprints where you least expect them. Chapter 5. The 7 Boxes of Truth. For years past, Gottlieb was meditating in Virginia, and Helms was gone. In 1977, a low-level clerk at the CIA was tasked with cleaning out a forgotten archives building in the suburbs. In a dusty corner, buried under stacks of mundane financial records, he found 7 boxes that had been misfiled. Sidney Gottlieb had burned the activity reports. He had destroyed the scientific data. But he had forgotten one thing: the receipts. The CIA is a bureaucracy. Every time they bought a human guinea pig, every time they paid a prostitute for a night of drugging sailors, every time they purchased a shipment of LSD from Switzerland, they had to file a financial voucher. These 7 boxes contained over 20,000 pages of financial records that detailed the true scale of MKUltra. The discovery was a nuclear explosion in the media. The Senate, led by Senator Frank Church, launched what became known as the Church Committee. For the first time, the American public watched in horror as the men in suits were forced to testify. They admitted to drugging their own citizens. They admitted to operating brothels. They admitted to funding psychiatric torture in Canada. The family of Frank Olson, the scientist who fell from the 13th floor in 1953, finally learned the truth. Their father hadn't jumped because of depression. He had been poisoned as part of a CIA experiment. In 1975, President Gerald Ford was forced to invite the Olson family to the White House to issue a historic apology. The government paid them $750,000 to keep them quiet. But for Eric Olson, Frank's son, money was never enough. In 1994, he made a decision that would chill the world. He had his father's body exhumed. The second autopsy revealed a shock. Frank Olson had a massive fracture on his forehead that occurred before he hit the ground. It suggested a terrifying scenario. Frank hadn't jumped. He had been struck unconscious and thrown out the window to silence him because he knew too much and wanted to quit. The case was changed from suicide to suspicious death, but it was too late. The witnesses were dead. The files were ashes. The truth remained buried beneath the cold concrete of a New York sidewalk. Chapter 6: The Legacy of Madness. After more than 20 years of experimentation and millions of dollars spent, what did the CIA actually find? Did they discover the secret code to control the human mind? The answer, fortunately, is no. Sidney Gottlieb and his team of black sorcerers failed in their ultimate goal. They found that the human mind is not a computer that can be easily reprogrammed. They succeeded in destroying minds, in shattering personalities, and in erasing memories, but they never mastered the art of building them back up. They created vegetables, they created predators, but they never created a programmable slave. However, the legacy of MKUltra did not die in 1973. It evolved. The techniques developed by Gottlieb, sensory deprivation, the use of chemical agents. The breaking of a prisoner's will became the foundation for modern enhanced interrogation techniques. The shadows of MKUltra can be seen in the black sites of the 21st century. And what of Sidney Gottlieb? He was never prosecuted. He lived out his days in peace, milking his goats and practicing yoga, claiming until his death in 1999 that he was a patriot who did what was necessary to protect his country. Conclusion: the fortress of the mind. As we close the file on MKUltra tonight, we are left with a painful lesson. It shows us that when fear becomes the law, when national security is placed above human rights, even the most civilized and educated men can become monsters. The victims of MKUltra, the nameless patients in psychiatric wards, the soldiers, the students, the men in the San Francisco brothels, they are the silent witnesses to a dark era. But there is one victory in this story. Despite all the drugs, all the electricity, and all the torture, the human spirit remained a fortress that the CIA could not fully conquer. Your mind is your own. Your thoughts are your private sanctuary. Tonight, as you sit in your safe room, remember that you are being watched by no one. No two-way mirrors, no spiked drinks. Your consciousness belongs only to you. Breathe in. Feel the clarity of your own thoughts. Let the paranoia of the past dissolve into the silence of the night. If you have strange dreams tonight, do not be afraid. It is only your brain cleaning its archives, a natural healing process that requires no intervention, no chemicals, and no masters. The lights are fading, the shadows are receding. Sleep well, you are free. Good night, and until the next entry in the Shadow Journal.